Hello everyone, I'm Dane.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the Malazan Brotherhood podcast.
Today we will be discussing Book 2, Chapter 10 of House of Chains, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 1 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It is not a book review, and it is most definitely not a replacement to reading the books.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those who have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
Today's episode contains depictions of tarot-adjacent scenes, and thus may not be suitable for some listeners. Tarot-adjacent.
It's good. Our show is listener-supported. If you'd like to support us, we would really appreciate that. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we are posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com. All right, today we have a couple of comments and additions.
Franklin had reached out to us a few times. He had mentioned that House of Chains originally was one of his least favorite books, especially the portion following Karsa's journey. But then after he said he finished the series, the entire series, including the Esselmont novels, the Karkanis trilogy, and the Witness books, he has completely changed his mind, and this book is excellent. He enjoyed the foreshadowing of future events, hints about the past hidden things throughout the chapters, and also enjoyed the discussions from last week's episode about darkness and shadow. I think that's one of the things that's really fun for your second read-throughs, or third or fourth, or however many times you choose to go through it. It can be really challenging in the beginning, and I remember feeling the same way on the first read-through, that you don't have the answers. We've discussed that before. You have to push through sometimes in some challenging bits of the book that maybe you're just not enjoying. You can't see the point of what any of this stuff is. But when you get through it, and certainly if you're like Franklin and you read all of the additional stuff that's out there, it really starts to clear things up for you. And for me, the same way. The second read-through, highly enjoyable. Being able to see where those little breadcrumbs are being dropped, how early in the series you're seeing them. I remember this book always attributing it to Karsa, and only Karsa, and completely forgetting it, but that's only the first quarter of the book. How much stuff is happening? How many plot lines and story points start in this book and then get carried out throughout the rest of the series? I agree with Franklin 100%. This is a fantastic book on the second read-through.
I wasn't as limited in my memory of like this being just for Karsa, because there's so many memorable characters that are introduced in this book for me, but I didn't really have any issues with this book. I was one of the people that enjoyed Karsa's journey, even though I could see how a lot of people, after Dead House Gates and Memories of Ice, they were so tight on keeping the story progressing forward, and now we're taking a hard left. We have no idea who these characters are. It's a completely different world, it feels like. So I could see how that would be challenging for some people. And then I have also heard from multiple other people about Shike's camp being difficult to get through.
Yeah.
I get it. I haven't read all of the accompanying stuff yet, particularly the Karkanis stuff. I'm waiting for the third book to come out. I think either this year or early next year is supposed to come out. Then I'll get into that. I think the prose is markedly different than the way he writes the books we're covering right now. Intentionally so.
Oh, even in the Karkanis trilogy?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see how I receive that.
Okay.
Franklin, we really appreciate you contacting us and giving us your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. Very much appreciated.
All right, I have a funny little story to tell. We'll see if everybody thinks it's funny. It begins with a video that I watched earlier this week talking about AI and token usage. So for those that aren't using AI on a regular basis, the tokens are, you have something called a context window, and that's how many tokens that the AI is capable of handling. And if you're just generally using AI to ask it questions, you're not running up against this, but people that are using it to code and stuff like that, this is where they start running into it. AI has a tendency to add in a bunch of flowery, useless language. So the video was talking about how somebody developed a skill set that it instructs AI to talk like a caveman, because it gets rid of all this ridiculous, flowery corporate BS language that means nothing, it says nothing, and it saves you on token costs, increasing your effectiveness.
Okay.
So that's how this story begins. I'm at work, and we are in a call with some management consultants from one of the big 3 consulting firms in the United States. I can't remember which one it was right now. They're that interchangeable. this guy proceeds to spend 3 minutes saying absolutely nothing at the beginning of the call. And I had just talked about this caveman language. I messaged one of my friends at work and I say, too many words. And a light bulb goes off in my head, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm turning into Karsa.
Yeah, Karsa. Too many words, Lowlander.
And so that's the joke now. So we're in this call with these consultants, and they don't work for our company. But to make matters worse, the next day, we're in another call with somebody in our company from the corporate initiatives department, and he does the same thing. He's using language like, I'm going to put my arms around this. We're going to short circuit this. This language is inherently vile to me. Like, I don't fit into the corporate subculture.
Right.
I'm like the troll you want in the shed in the back that solves your problems. But generally speaking, you don't want talking to a bunch of people. Like, I'm on good behavior, but I'm not this type of person. You know, like, I like to get to the point. The funny thing is I have to tell AI to make me sound more human in my communications because I'm very to the point. It's not that flowery.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny, the journey this week through these three things. And then I realize I'm turning into a barbarian, or may have already been. I just realized what I am.
Yeah. You've just become self-aware. That's fantastic. I'm sure there's a lot of people who have encountered the same stuff. I'm not in corporate, but you can kind of detect it. The BS meter is going off when you start hearing certain types of words and sentence formation.
Let's double click on that.
God. My wife will get emails, corporate emails sometimes, you know, sent nationwide, and she'll read them to me sometimes. And it's like, who crafted this? Like you say, this, to me, that's not a real human. All that extra nonsense language.
Yeah.
Too many
Fun
words.
stuff.
Somebody might be saying that about this episode, you know, some of our episodes.
What's funny is certain people have said I like the sound of my own voice. And so what's interesting about the whole thing is maybe it's the venue that's the issue. Because I have plenty of things to say about these books. I'm not going to say it. But maybe you have to care about what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And be passionate about it.
Yeah, that's probably a big thing. Probably a big thing. Mm.
As opposed to a means to an end.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Thank you for your story, Kamraun. I like it.
All right, Chapter 10, Part 1. The chapter begins with a quote. All that breaks must be discarded, even as the thunder of faith returns ever-fading echoes. End quote. And that is from Prelude to Anomandaris by Fisher. And we've had a couple of quotes from Fisher throughout the book so far. Did you have any thoughts on this? I was trying to parse this, the nebulous nature of what's trying to be conveyed here.
I wondered if you were going to ask about this. This one was a little bit of a struggle. I did give it a little bit of thought. What comes to mind is the House of Chains. I mean, we're in there. We're in the book. It makes sense, but kind of like this seems like crippled God. Things being alluded to the crippled God. Everything that breaks must be discarded. That kind of sums up who he wants, the kinds of followers and stuff. I think he said something explicitly about that. Anybody who is broken or sundered is welcome in his house. That kind of thought process. But the second part is what I struggled with, and I think that's where there's probably a little bit more meat in this quote.
Before having read through this chapter, I sat there for a couple minutes. I'm like, what the heck is even trying to be conveyed here? And we might need to come back to this because I think this is in relation to Karsa and the Seven.
Okay.
I'm not sure how this is in relation to Rake, but when I think about the second part of this, the thunder of faith returns ever-fading echoes, I think of ripples in a pool and how when you throw a rock and it spreads out and it comes back and then it goes back out, it gets weaker every time. Mm-hmm. I just have a vision of your relationship with a god diminishing over time, potentially. And so you may still believe, but it's getting weaker as things are happening to you. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's like a self-reinforcing thing where if your faith is super strong, it can help resonate. But if it's weakening, it just kind of is like a downward spiral. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but let's come back to this in relation to Karsa when we get to the third act of the episode today, as it were.
Okay.
The day the faces in the rock awakened was celebrated among the Teblor by a song. The memories of his people were, Karsa Orlong knew, twisted things. surrendered to oblivion when unpleasant, burgeoning to a raging fire of glory when heroic. Defeat had been spun into victory in the weaving of every tale. He wished Bairoth still lived, that his sagacious companion did more than haunt his dreams, or stand before him as a thing of rough carved stone in which some chance scarring of his chisel had cast a mocking, almost derisive expression. Bairoth could have told him much of what he needed to know at this moment. While Karsa's familiarity with their homeland's sacred glade was far greater than either Bairoth's or Delum Thord's, and so ensured the likenesses possessed some accuracy, the warrior sensed that something essential was missing from the 7 faces he had carved into the stone trees. Perhaps his lack of talent had betrayed him, though that did not seem the case with the carvings of Bairoth and Delum. The energy of their lives seemed to emanate from their statues, as if merged with the petrified wood's own memory. As with the entire forest, in which there was the sense that the trees but awaited the coming of spring, of rebirth beneath the wheel of the stars, it seemed that the 2 Teblor warriors were but awaiting the season's turn. Touching on something that Trull and Onrak discussed last week, now that we've spoken of creating monuments to entities, have your thoughts changed on Karsa's carving out the likenesses of Bairoth and Delum in this glade? Is he going to manifest their spirits here, you think?
You get that impression, certainly. If we do tie right back to the previous chapter, it seems very likely that it's possible. I guess we'll find out for sure. I don't think he's doing that deliberately. Well, actually, he could. I mean, he understands how the faces in the 7. Did he ever actually speak to them in that glade, though? Or maybe he just felt a presence?
He made vows to them before he set out on his journey. That's like one of the first sections of the book.
So maybe he is aware of how this could come to pass, to where carving their likenesses here could cause a sort of a spiritual rebirth in them or something. That's possible.
Almost like calling them to this place.
Right.
As I read through later, I realized this, but I think it was interesting that he introduced the concept almost immediately right before this is happening.
Yeah.
Separately, I was thinking, did the same thing happen to the 7 faces in the rock when they were carved into that glade back in Genebacus? Were their spirits trapped there within that stone when their faces were carved there by whoever did it? Was it the original Talani mask that interred them there that did it?
Or like the Teblor shaman who carved it in?
I don't think it was the Teblor shaman, right? It was noted that there was like a mockery to the way they were carved in the rocks. I want to say it was almost like the Talani mask did it that interred them there. They were punishing them. They were not interred the same way that other Talani masks were. Like Onrak is supposed to get dismembered, and his skull is supposed to be put somewhere where he can enjoy some views for eternity. They were broken and shattered and then buried in a cave or something, and then these faces were carved in the rock. The concept of trapping the spirit of something by carving its likeness, and Onrak talking about the taboo of that among the Talani mass. I'm just wondering if there's something similar happening with the 7.
I guess they were prisoners, those 7. They marked the site of this internment, with the carved faces being a likeness of the prisoner within. And the faces were intended to mock the vista with blank, blind eyes as a permanent reminder of their failure. So I guess that's what was happening specifically. And then I guess the influence on the Teblor, that the carvings were originally meant as a marker for the undead, and the names and presences of the powers eventually twisted the minds of the Teblor shaman. So over the centuries, the Teblor came to view the carvings as the faces in the rock and worshiping them, but under false pretense, I guess.
Yeah, so I think the theory stands in that those spirits were trapped there by the carving.
I think you're right on with that.
Maybe the Teblor's worship contributes to that as well, meaning they're worshiping the faces in the rock. Through their worship, it strengthens the 7, but also it's localized to just that area. It's almost like they need to find a way to break free of that. That's what their goal is, it seems like.
Well, that seems to tie back to the other themes, right? Where the strength of their power comes from their worshippers, and if they're localized right there to that Teblor tribe, then they have limited power. I think they talked about that a little bit. Things like they weren't getting disease and things like that, but it didn't really spread to them being able to break free and roam around and all that.
But Raraku defied every season. Raraku itself was eternal in its momentousness, perpetually awaiting rebirth. Patience in the stone, in the restless, ever-murmuring sands. The holy desert seemed, to Karsa's mind, a perfect place for the 7 gods of the Teblor. It was possible, he reflected as he slowly paced before the faces he had carved into the bowls, that something of that sardonic sentiment had poisoned his hands. If so, the flaw was not visible to his eyes. There was little in the faces of the gods that could permit expression or demeanor. His recollection was of skin stretched over broad, robust bone, of brows that projected like ridges, casting the eyes in deep shadow. Broad, flat cheekbones, a heavy, chinless jaw, a bestiality so unlike the features of the Teblor. He scowled, pausing to stand before Urgal, which, as with the 6 others, he had carved level with his own eyes. Serpents slithered over his dusty, bared feet, his only company in the glade. The sun had begun its descent, though the heat remained fierce.
What do you think could be the reason for something lacking in the carvings of the 7? Why would Delim and Bairoth be carved so much better?
I was thinking maybe it's like he said that he has a tainted perception of the 7 faces in the rock, and it has poisoned his ability to create them. And with Bairoth and Delim, it seems that he was inspired and he has positive thoughts about them now, and he honors them in carving their likenesses, whereas he feels he's being used by the 7, so that could corrupt what comes through.
Okay, that's what I was thinking too. Is just his feelings about Bairoth and Delim specifically, fonder memories. He maybe has some regret and things like that, so he wants to do more honor to them. And now that he's starting to change his perception of the 7 and see how they have been trying to lead him astray or poison his mind or whatever it is going on, that he's carving them with a little bit less enthusiasm or something.
But also, I think he comes back later and realizes what he's noticing is different later in the chapter, so we can come back and touch on that too.
Okay.
After a long moment of contemplation, Karsa spoke out loud. Bairoth Guild, look with me upon our god. Tell me what is wrong. Where have I erred? That was your greatest talent, wasn't it? Seeing so clearly my every wrong step. You might ask, what did I seek to achieve with these carvings? You would ask that, for it is the only question worth answering. But I have no answer for you. Ah, yes, I can almost hear you laugh at my pathetic reply. A voice in his head said, I have no answer. Karsa continued, Perhaps, Bairoth, I imagined you wished their company, the great Teblor gods who one day awakened. Karsa thought, in the minds of the shamans, awakened in their dreams, there and there alone. Yet now I know the flavor of those dreams, and it is nothing like the song, nothing at all. He had found this glade seeking solitude, and it had been solitude that had inspired his artistic creations. Yet now that he was done, he no longer felt alone here. He had brought his own life to this place, the legacies of his deeds. It had ceased to be a refuge, and the need to visit was born now from the lure of his efforts, drawing him back again and again. To walk among the snakes that came to greet him, to listen to the hiss of sands skittering on the moaning desert wind, the sands that arrived in the glade to caress the trees and the faces of stone with their bloodless touch. Raraku delivered the illusion that time stood motionless, the universe holding its breath, an insidious conceit. Beyond the whirlwind's furious wall, the hourglasses were still turned. Armies assembled and began their march, the sound of their boots, shields, and gear a deathly clatter and roar. And, on a distant continent, the Teblor were a people under siege. Karsa continued staring at the stone face of Urgal. He thought, you are not Teblor, yet you claim to be our god. You awakened, there in the cliff, so long ago. But what of before that time? Where were you then, Urgal, you and your 6 terrible companions? A soft chuckle from across the clearing brought Karsa around. A voice asked, and which of your countless secrets is this one, friend? Karsa rumbled, Leomin, it has been a long time since you last left your pit. Edging forward, the desert warrior glanced down at the snakes. He said, I was starved for company. Unlike you, I see. He gestured at the carved bowls, then asked, are these yours? I see 2 Toblakai. They stand in those trees as if alive and but moments from striding forth. It disturbs me to be reminded that there are more of you. But what of these others? Karsa replied, my gods. He noted Leomin's startled expression and elaborated. The faces in the rock. In my homeland, they adorn a cliffside, facing onto a glade little different from this one. Leomin said, Toblakai. Turning back to study Urgal's bestial visage once more, Karsa continued, they call upon me still, when I sleep. It is as Ghost Hand says, I am haunted. Leomin asked, by what, friend? What is it your gods demand of you? Karsa shot Leomin a glance, then he shrugged and said, why have you sought me out? Leomin made to say one thing, then chose another. I think Leomin was about to point out that these are the faces of the Talani masked to Karsa before he was interrupted. Notice the pause in his sentence when he asks what the quote-unquote gods demand of Karsa. He knows but chooses not to pursue it.
Mm-hmm. It's probably pretty tactful as well. Going down that road probably would start a little argument, maybe not really what he wants to do at this point. I get that impression as well, but I wonder, what is Leoman's familiarity with T'Lani Mass? Do we know that? Or is it, he just seems to be pretty learned, though.
Yeah.
He has a good grasp on history and stuff like that, it seems.
If I had to guess, I would say he probably came across them during the Malazan conquest of this continent somehow or other.
Okay. Or at least stories about them, recognizes them, something along those lines.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's also, he seems to know a lot about the Toblakai in general. So maybe he can just see that these are not Toblakai that you're carving in. There's something else. So
there's very obviously a difference between the other two and then these 7.
Right.
Leoman said, because my patience is at an end. There has been news of events concerning the Malazans. Distant defeats. Shaik and her favored few are much excited, yet achieve nothing. Here we await the adjunct's legions. In one thing Corbolo Dam is right. The march of those legions should be contested, but not as he would have it. No pitched battles. Nothing so dramatic or precipitous. In any case, Toblakai, Mathok has given me leave to ride out with a company of warriors, and Shaik has condescended to permit us beyond the whirlwind. Karsa smiled as he said, Indeed, and you are free to harass the adjunct? Ah, I thought as much. You are to scout, but no further than the hills beyond the whirlwind. She will not permit you to journey south, but at least you will be doing something, and for that I am pleased for you, Leoman. Leoman stepped closer and said, Once beyond the whirlwind, Toblakai. Karsa replied, She will know none the less. Leoman sneered, saying, And so I will incur her displeasure. There is nothing new in that. And what of you, friend? She calls you her bodyguard, yet when did she last permit you into her presence? In that damned tent of hers. She is reborn indeed, for she is not as she once was. Karsa said, She is Malazan. Leoman said, What? Karsa replied, Before she became Shaik. You know this as well as I. Leoman said, She was reborn. She became the will of the goddess, Toblakai. All that she was before that time is without meaning. Karsa rumbled, So it is said, yet her memories remain. And it is those memories that chain her so. She is trapped by fear, and that fear is born of a secret which she will not share. The only other person who knows that secret is Ghost Hands.
This is kind of interesting to me. It makes me wonder if there were more conversations between Karsa, Leoman, and Shaik that we haven't been privy to. Or could this just be a remark on her being Malazan? And since they were there from the beginning, they know that she must have her own memories from the past. Because Leoman and Karsa, they knew Shaik Elder even before Felicin showed up. So maybe they have even more knowledge of what life for the Shaik would be like.
Karsa is probably comparing the behaviors of Shaik Elder and then Felicin acting as Shaik now, and he's associating this secret that she shares with Heberic, which we know is Tavora is Felicin's older sister, as the cause of this current passivity that she's displaying. Why else would she hide within the whirlwind and wait for the Malazans to come to her? The whole continent was ready for taking whenever Coltane got defeated.
Right.
And the whole Aaron army was destroyed.
Right.
It's hard to justify this retraction into within the whirlwind and just sitting here.
Yeah. It is puzzling because I think that was almost right at the end of Deadhouse, right? That they show up, they see all of the people kind of crucified to the trees. And like you said, they could have taken Aaron then and there, it seems. Very little resistance. And then they chose to just turn around and go back. And I think even her council and her mages were curious about why that would happen, but they seemed to follow along anyway.
That means before the whole army with Tavora showed up.
Right. They weren't even there yet.
Aaron was ripe for the taking, yeah.
Yeah.
They could have sieged it.
I don't think it would have taken that much. She had her mages right there. It didn't seem like Aaron had any powerful mages, at least none that were mentioned. It's not like Quick Ben was there or anything.
Going back to that conversation about the power being localized, maybe she can't project it that far beyond Raraku. She was able to form that tunnel with the whirlwind to transport the army there, but maybe now that she's out here, she just can't use too much of her own power to help the army. So at that point, you're relying on tactics and the actual abilities of the armies, which, as we know, not impressive compared to a trained and seasoned Malazan army.
Right.
I provide that caveat because a rookie army that doesn't have any cohesion is a whole other scenario.
Yeah, that's true.
Leoman stared at Karsa for a long moment, then slowly settled into a crouch. The two men were surrounded by snakes, the sound of slithering on sand a muted undercurrent. Lowering one hand, Leoman watched as a flare neck began entwining itself up his arm. He said, "Your words, Toblakai, whisper of defeat." Shrugging, Karsa strode to where his toolkit waited at the base of a tree. He said, "These years have served me well. Your company, Leoman, Shaik Elder. I once vowed that the Malazans were my enemies. Yet, from what I have seen of the world since that time, I now understand that they are no crueler than any other lowlander. Indeed, they alone seem to profess a sense of justice. The people of 7 cities, who so despise them and wish them gone, they seek nothing more than the power that the Malazans took from them, power that they used to terrorize their own people. Leoman, you and your kind make war against justice, and it is not my war." Leoman bared his teeth and said, "Justice? You expect me to challenge your words, Toblakai? I will not. Shaik Reborn says there is no loyalty within me. Perhaps she is right. I have seen too much. Yet here I remain. Have you ever wondered why?" Karsa drew out a chisel and mallet, then said, "The light fades, and that makes the shadows deeper. It is the light I now realize. That is what is different about them." Leoman said, "The apocalyptic, Toblakai. Disintegration, annihilation, everything. Every human, lowlander. With our twisted horrors, all that we commit upon each other, the depredations, the cruelties. For every gesture of kindness and compassion, there are 10,000 acts of brutality. Loyalty? I have none. Not for my kind, and the sooner we obliterate ourselves, the better this world will be."
Boy, he's talking about Karsa sounding like the defeatist. Leoman is talking about the end for everyone. That sounds a little worse than what Karsa had said.
Leoman has judged humanity and found them lacking.
Yeah.
So I want to bring up Elden Ring here in the story, and I don't really want to go too far into the lore of it because that is a whole thing in and of itself. But I need to bring up a couple of concepts that are relevant to this conversation. The paths you take in the game lead to a number of different optional endings for the main story. Generally speaking, what's happened in what they call the Lands Between, which is the world of Elden Ring, is there's a goddess and they have stored away destined death, which is preventing people from actually being able to die. You have a choice of restoring death to the world, which allows the cycle of life to continue as normal. That's one of your options. But there's also an option where you can embrace the frenzied flame. And the frenzied flame, when you choose that ending, you basically burn the entire world.
Oh.
It sounds to me like Leoman has chosen this as his outcome for everything, where he only looks at the negative side of humanity, doesn't see any of the good, sees the overwhelming negativity, and he has decided that all of it just needs to go away.
Yeah.
The ultimate destruction of everything is the only solution to this.
Burned and started anew or something like that?
Not even started anew.
Just ended?
Just ended.
Okay.
When you get to this point, I suspect he would say humans are what we are. We're just animals that we treat each other cruelly. We band up together and punish those that aren't in our group. And violence just is always the outcome, no matter who or when. You might have little pockets of civility here and there, but at the end of the day, you're going to end up fighting somebody. And that's just the way we are.
Yeah.
We like to think we can do better, but it is always going to devolve at some point. And so if you have that viewpoint, and I see how you could get to this point.
Yeah.
For someone like him that has no family, no children, he's seen enough atrocities in his own life that you just get to this dark place and you just like, okay, we'll just burn it all.
Mm-hmm. And if he has embraced this idea of he's got no more loyalty left, then I guess it makes that even easier to make that choice, you know?
Yeah, which kind of takes me back to a conversation about Drajna the Apocalyptic. Maybe he's not loyal to Shaik, but the ideas in the book of Drajna, which Shaik was complaining about, there's just, what was it Shaik that was complaining about? It's just destruction in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe he's just loyal to that book and he's like, all right, I like this idea.
Yeah.
Because it solves all the problems. No man, no problem.
Yeah.
Was that a Stalin quote?
Yeah, but famously attributed to Joseph Stalin, you're right.
What is the exact quote?
No man, no problem, it says.
Yeah, exactly. I thought I was simplifying it, paraphrasing.
I guess popularized by Anatoly Rybakov's novel Children of the Arbat, but attributed to Stalin, and that is exactly how it is. I mean, I can't read the Russian direct phrase.
I thought you were studying Russian.
Study it just enough to swear at my coworkers.
Okay. Chose to burn the whole world, by the way.
Your kids have a certain take on this. Destroy him. Burn the world. Like all of these.
I get real worried when he's asking to buy lighters and he wants to start the fire.
I almost set the house on fire when I was a kid. around with mom's hairspray and lighters because I was like,
in
look
the
at what
house?
this can do. Woof, woof.
Holy
and like,
shit.
I was doing that in the basement. Somebody came downstairs like, what's that smell? And I was like, put it away. Never mess with it again. Stop doing that.
Karsa said, the light makes them look almost human. Distracted as he was, the Tolbukai did not notice Leoman's narrowing eyes, nor the struggle to remain silent. One does not step between a man and his gods. The snake's head lifted in front of Leoman's face and hovered there, tongue flicking. We were noodling on why Karsa thinks these look wrong earlier in the book, and we were saying, well, maybe his perception of the seven has tainted his ability to carve them in a neutral fashion.
Right.
But now he's saying, well, it's the light that's throwing it out, which can have a great impact on it.
Yeah.
Maybe he did a good job and he just needed the light to be adjusted.
Yeah.
So all that conjecture was for nothing.
Again, just read a little bit further.
Just read a little bit.
To go back and talk about why Leoman's talking to him and Karsa just kind of ignores it. Why do you think he did that? Just stop responding to Leoman. If you're somebody's friend and they're talking to you, why ignore them and just go on your own topic?
Okay, so maybe he doesn't feel obligated to continue this conversation, but let's look back to what Leoman does. He pretends he's high and passes out when he wants to stop a conversation.
Yeah.
And so maybe Karsa's like, I'll just treat you the same way. I just won't respond to something if I don't feel like talking about it. But I will also add, Karsa was actively here working on his creations and was interrupted. He was literally interrupted in thought. And it could be that he just now realizes the faces don't look right, threw some spark and went back to fixing what he was working on. Because I can tell you, I work from home. If I'm in the middle of trying to fix some spreadsheet or something, and then my wife walks in and she starts trying to have a conversation with me, I'm not listening. I'm literally not listening. I'm in the middle of something and I'm trying to solve it. And otherwise you lose your train of thought. If you're busy, you don't always want to engage in a conversation.
Okay. I mean, I guess in that same line of thought, if the topic of conversation is not something he really wants to continue on and his mind is preoccupied, maybe it's much easier to just tune that out and just go back to what you were doing.
Yeah.
This conversation is not interesting to me.
You're just nodding.
Right.
Are you listening to me? Then you go back to the buffer and you're like,
yeah.
What would I?
The cog is spinning and no, I wasn't listening at all.
Elsewhere in Shaik's camp, Hebrick muttered, "The House of Chains," his expression souring at the words. Bidithal shivered, though it was hard to tell whether from fear or pleasure. He said, "Reaver, consort, the unbound. These are interesting, yes? For all the world like shattered." Hebrick demanded, "From whence came these images?" Simply looking upon the wooden cards with their lacquered paintings, blurred as they were, was filling the ex-priest's throat with bile. Hebrick thought, "I sense flaws in each and every one. That is no accident, no failing of the hand that brushed them into being."
This is interesting to me, too, that even the paintings of the deck are flawed, just like the patrons or members of the House of Chains.
We know who painted these images for the crippled god. He was that artist that was stopped by Picker at the beginning of Memories of Ice. He carried the torques that were sanctified in the Temple of Treach, if you recall, that went on Picker's arm.
Yeah.
He also had the cards hidden in his pack that he then delivered to the crippled god and was quote-unquote rewarded by the flaring of those tumors that were in his crotch area, I guess, turned him into a paraplegic.
Okay.
That was the artist that drew these.
Okay.
And he was hoping to use that money to have some magical healing done to him.
Yeah, that's good. I didn't remember that.
I do wonder at the propagation of these images, though, because that was one deck. And how did those cards then suddenly end up in all these physical decks across the world?
It is interesting because everybody has their own decks, but they all have similar likenesses throughout. Is it just that there's the magic that's within that system and they all kind of change at the same time across the whole world? Is that what's happening?
Maybe they have like a number of Joker cards and they're kind of like a wild card, and then they have the ability to just randomly change into something. I'm curious how Erikson would envision this mechanism working, propagating across the world. I assume it's sorceress, right?
Yeah.
Now, these titles, Reaver, Consort, the Unbound, I can guess that the consort is Poliel because that was mentioned in Memories of Ice, that she had started to follow the crippled god. That makes sense. She's the goddess of disease. Mm-hmm. I'm curious as to who fills the roles of Reaver and the Unbound. Mm-hmm. Do you have any guesses?
No, I don't. This is another thing that as reading through, I kind of gloss over and haven't really thought about who would be in these roles. there's going to be some more description. I don't know if you want to wait a little bit later or you want to tackle it now.
We can wait a little bit because I think the Reaver will get a clue later in this section here.
Okay.
Unbound, I have no idea.
Yeah. There are a few roles we've seen in other houses, like
the Mason.
Mason, wasn't it described like the knight of one of the houses that ended up by being bought in, like the Knight of Hood or something like that?
Yeah, the version of High House Death.
Yeah. There seem to be a lot of titles. Who fills these roles?
Obelisk.
Exactly. I don't even know what some of these mean sometimes. So, but anyway, I guess we can tackle that as we go through a little bit more, or try to.
Yeah. In answer to his question, Lorik said, "There is no doubting their veracity. The power emanating from them is a sorcerous stench. I have never before witnessed such a vigorous birth within the deck. Not even Shadow felt." Bidethal snapped, "Shadow! Those deceivers could never unveil that realm's true power. No, here in this new house, the theme is pure. Imperfection is celebrated. The twist of chaotic chance mars one and all." Her arms wrapped tight about herself, Shaik hissed, "Silence! We must think on this. No one speak. Let me think." Hebrik studied her for a moment, squinting to bring her into focus, even though she sat beside him. The cards from the new house had arrived the same day as the news of the Malazan defeats on Genebakis, and the time since then had been one of seething discord among Shaik's commanders, sufficient to dampen her pleasure at hearing of her brother Ganoa's parents' survival, and now leading her to uncharacteristic distraction. So these cards arrived. Somebody is painting them and distributing them. So maybe there are people that create these decks and they, through sorceress channels, they're attuned to this. They realize that these new cards exist and they actually paint them. And then maybe they're inspired by the original images that were created. Maybe it's something along those lines.
Maybe. Still, to go back to what you said, the distribution method seems odd. Like you paint them, and then how do you get them across all the various continents? How do you know?
You got to upload them to the server.
Yeah, because then it's like, okay, now you've uploaded them to the server, but then who's playing? How do you know which router to get them to? Who's the adept that you need to get the deck to?
It's the people that are attuned to this.
They're seeking it. They have a proxy set up so that it just pings them back when they get a result that they want.
No, they have login credentials to the server, and they're authorized to download these images. Okay. And it's. I think they're adepts. So if you think of someone like Tattersail, potentially, she was an adept. She was actually being positioned to be the master of the deck, but like she could feel the deck and it was channeling. So someone like that could sense that there are new roles, new things. And maybe there's somebody that also has artistic talent, the people that actually create these decks, and they could paint the images.
Okay.
It's got to be something like that because somebody's physically creating these cards.
Yeah.
And not just one, it's all over the place. The street hawker that Kalam met with to get his new brace of knives a couple chapters ago, that guy had a cabinet full of decks that had been updated with the House of Chains. He's getting them from somewhere.
That's right. Okay.
So maybe somebody picked up one of those decks, brought it to this camp, and that arrived the same day that they got the news that the Malazans had fallen.
Okay.
And now where that street hawker got them from, probably the adept I'm talking about that creates the decks or whatever. His source.
I mean, it's fun to think about, but this is like the back end of a server. I don't know what's going on back there. It's mysterious and nebulous, and that's fine. I don't need it spelled out, but it is kind of fun to think about.
You don't need to know the infrastructure to enjoy the game.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
The House of Chains was woven into their fates, an insidious intrusion, an infection against which they'd had no chance to prepare. But was it an enemy, or the potential source for renewed strength? It seemed Bidethal was busy convincing himself that it was the latter, no doubt drawn in that direction by his growing disaffection with Shaik Reborn. Lorik, on the other hand, seemed more inclined to share Hebrik's own misgivings, whilst Febril was unique in remaining silent on the entire matter.
Maybe this is too early to bring this up, stop me if it is, but Bidethal seems like he has such a problem with Shadowthrone and Quintillion that he wants to find a way to align with the House of Chains as a way to get those two removed from Shadow.
I could see that, totally. He seems obsessed. That's a trigger for him, is any mention of those guys, he just goes into a rage and starts flying off the handle. So given that really strong reaction, I think it's perfectly reasonable to think that he's looking for whatever he could to get his cult back on top.
Yeah, every mention of them sets him off. He's really obsessed with them not being the real rulers there. He wants the cult of, is it Rashan or Mianus?
I think it's Rashan. He's a Rashanice.
Rashanice. His excitement of the House of Chains like the birth of this house. It seems like anything he can do to oust those guys. That's the feeling that I'm getting from him so far.
You got this great rookie that was just recruited into the league, and you're looking at recruiting them to try and get your team on top.
The top prospect, yeah.
The air within the tent was close, soured by human sweat. Hebrecht wanted nothing more than to leave, to escape all this, yet he sensed Shaik clinging to him, a spiritual grip as desperate as anything he'd felt from her before. Hebrecht said, "Show once more the new unaligned." Then he thought, yes, for the 1,000th time. Scowling, Bidethal searched through the deck, then drew out the card, which he laid down in the center of the goat hair mat. Bidethal sneered and said, "If any of the new arrivals is dubious, it is this one. Master of the deck? Absurd. How can one control the uncontrollable?" There was silence. Hebrecht thought, the uncontrollable? Such as the whirlwind itself? Shaik had clearly not caught the insinuation. She said, "Ghost hands, I would you take this card. Feel it. Seek to sense what you can from it." Hebrecht sighed and said, "You make this request again and again, Chosen One. But I tell you, there is no link between the power of my hands and the deck of dragons. I am of no help to you." Shaik said, "Then listen closely and I shall describe it. Never mind your hands. I ask you now as a once priest, as a scholar. Listen. The face is obscured, yet hints." In a derisive tone, Bidethal interrupted, "It is obscured because the card is no more than the projection of someone's wishful thinking." Shaik said, "Cut me off again and you will regret it, Bidethal. I have heard you enough on this subject. If your mouth opens again, I will tear out your tongue. Ghost hands, I will continue. The figure is slightly above average in height. There is the crimson streak of a scar, or blood perhaps, down one side of the face. A wounding, yes? Yes, I am certain it's a man, not a woman. He stands on a bridge, of stone, shot through with cracks. The horizon is filled with flames. It seems he and the bridge are surrounded, as if by followers or servants." Lorik added, "Or guardians, your pardon, Chosen One." Shaik went on, "Guardians. Yes, a good possibility. They have the look of soldiers, do they not?" Hebrecht asked, "On what do these guardians stand? Can you see the ground they stand upon?" Shaik said, "Bones. There is much fine detail there, Ghost Hands." "How did you know?" Hebrecht said, "Describe those bones, please." Shaik said, "Not human, very large. Part of a skull is visible. Long-snouted, terribly fanged. It bears the remnants of a helmet of some sort." Hebrecht asked, "A helmet? On the skull?" Shaik replied, "Yes." Hebrecht fell silent. He began rocking, yet was only remotely aware of the motion. There was a sourceless keening growing in his head, a cry of grief, of anguish. All right, I'm going to pause for just a second to go through some of this imagery, just talk through it with you. So we know it's Perrin, who is the master of the deck. He got his ear ripped off by that burb, the Chaos Condor, when him and Quick Ben went to take out that damn condor that got shot down.
Right.
He's standing on a bridge burners.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting that the soldiers are protecting him. These bones that they're standing on, the only thing I can think of is they're Kachain Shamal skulls.
Right.
Because they're fanged, long-snouted, and have a helmet on their head. Do you agree with all of that?
Yeah. When I went back through the text to take a look to see if I could confirm all that stuff, and that's exactly what I saw, was the same stuff. I mean, with the amount of detail on there is pretty incredible that it shows all of that. Perrin, Kachain Shamal, bridge burners, standing on a bridge. The bridge is being kind of blasted apart. Seems to signify the breaking down of the bridge burners, their ultimate destruction and everything. So
the world is on fire.
Really interesting.
Them.
Yeah, it's really pretty impressive that all this is captured in this card.
Shaik's voice trembling, she said, "The master, he stands strangely, arms held out, bent at the elbows so that the hands depend, away from the body. It is the strangest posture." Hebrecht asked, "Are his feet together?" Shaik said, "Almost impossibly so." Hebrecht thought, as if forming a point. Dull and remote to his own ears, Hebrecht asked, "And what does he wear?" Shaik said, "Tight silks, from the way they shimmer. Black." Hebrecht asked, "Anything else?" Shaik said, "There is a chain. It cuts across his torso, left shoulder down to right hip. It is a robust chain, black wrought iron. There are wooden discs on his shoulders, like epaulets, but large, a hand span each." Hebrecht asked, "How many in all?" Shaik replied, 4. "You know something now, Ghost Hands. Tell me." Lorik murmured, "Yes, you have thoughts on this." Bidethal growled, "He lies. He has been forgotten by everyone, even his god, and he now seeks to invent a new importance." In a mocking rasp, Febril said, "Bidethal, you foolish man. He is a man who touches what we cannot feel, and sees what we are blind to. Speak on, Ghost Hands. Why does this master stand so?" Hebrecht said, "Because he is a sword." Then he thought, but not any sword. He is one sword above all, and it cuts cold. That sword is as this man's own nature. He will cleave his own path. None shall lead him. He stands now in my mind. I see him. I see his face. Oh, Shaikh, Lorik said, a master of the deck. Then he sighed and continued, a lodestone to order, in opposition to the House of Chains. Yet he stands alone. Guardians are no, while the servants of the house are many. Hebrik smiled and said, alone? He has always been thus. Lorik asked, then why is your smile that of a broken man, Ghost Hands? Hebrik thought, I grieve for humanity, this family so at war with itself. Then he said, to that, Lorik, I shall not answer. Shaikh pronounced, I shall now speak with Ghost Hands alone.
To back up just a little bit, I found it interesting that even Febril is kind of siding with Hebrik in this and telling Bidithal to kind of shut up and let the man speak. It seems a little out of character because Hebrik seems to kind of be on his own, and maybe Lorik is the only one, Lorik and Shaikh, the only one to kind of respect anything that he has to say or show him any level of courtesy whatsoever. And so it's kind of interesting to see Febril speak up in that situation.
The thing that was interesting to me is Bidithal is telling Hebrik that, oh, you're trying to be more important. Hebrik didn't insert himself into this. He is being prompted for this from Shaikh. Mm-hmm. And so Bidithal is just being an idiot, I think. And Febril is seeing that. He's like, listen, he obviously has some value. Just shut up and listen for a minute, you know? Just stop with all this petty nonsense. This is the trouble with these leaders in this camp, this infighting nonsense. Bidithal Toplakai just needs to get in there and just deal with this guy.
Yeah. Well, this is another one of those examples of Bidithal being a very unlikable person. He's bitter, derisive, everything. Ugh.
And in contrast to those Tice Leosin, who their character isn't necessarily much better, but I just didn't have this immediate disgust to them.
Right.
Bidithal's just really nasty character.
Yep.
You hate him.
Easily to get under your skin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I hate him.
Another thing, I sometimes wonder if this is really suspicious behavior from Shaikh. There have been a few times she demands everyone out but Hebrik. Do you get that? Or is it possible that, maybe since he's been with her from the beginning, everybody knows they came in together, no one thinks anything of it, and it's just like that's her closest confidant?
If I was one of the other commanders in this fell gathering and I kept getting kicked out, I would be suspicious as well. What hold could he have on her and possibly the Whirlwind Goddess? Is he co-opting this whole thing? Is he corrupting her in some way? How do the hands play into this? What forces are being projected through him, potentially? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't like it. If I was Febril or Lorik or Bidithal, I obviously would have an issue with this.
Yeah. It's happened a couple of times, and it always thinks, like, this is real sus. To use the Gen Alpha. This is real sus.
But Hebrik shook his head and said, I am done speaking, for now, even with you, Chosen One. I will say this and nothing more. Have faith in the master of the deck. He shall answer the House of Chains. He shall answer it. Feeling ancient beyond his years, Hebrik climbed to his feet. There was a stir of motion beside him. Then young Felissen's hand settled on his forearm. He let her guide him from the chamber. Outside, dusk had arrived, marked by the cries of the goats as they were led into the enclosures. To the south, just beyond the city's outskirts, rumbled the thunder of horse hooves. Camus Rello and Corbolo Dom had absented themselves from the meeting to oversee the exercises of the troops. Training conducted in the Malazan style, which Hebrik had to admit was the Renegade Fist's only expression of brilliance thus far. For the first time, a Malazan army would meet its match in all things, barring Moranth munitions. Tactics and disposition of forces would be identical, ensuring that numbers alone would decide the day. The threat of the munitions would be answered with sorcery, for the army of the Whirlwind possessed a full cadre of high mages, whilst Tavora had, as far as they knew, none. Spies in Erin had noted the presence of the two Wiccan children, Nil and Nether, but both, it was claimed, had been thoroughly broken by Coltane's death.
This is reminding me a little of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, when Jade Fox stole the secrets of the Wu Dan's martial arts, but it was revealed she didn't fully understand it. She was just copying some images. I wonder if that's Corbolo in a little way, practicing the Malazan exercises in formation, but never fully able to replicate the full capacity of it. What do you think?
We'll see. If you recall, at the beginning of Deadhouse Gates, the army was put through its paces in training exercises and eventually rose to the challenge. Is Corbolo Dom as skilled a leader as Coltane was in that scenario? He sure thinks so.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see. We really don't know a lot about him short of him betraying the Malazans in favor of the rebellion. I'm not getting a good impression of him, though, so far.
I guess the argument can be made that, he ended Coltane's run. He overtook Camistrello and started leading that. But with Coltane's forces and the refugees, they were getting harried all the way back. So it's not really like they were setting up an even 1v1 army clash.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to run. They were trying to do more protecting. So it's like that argument of, well, he was a high fist, so he has to have been skilled, and he was better than Camist at leading the army. But I don't feel like it was really army versus army battle. He was just kind of like nipping at their heels the whole time. That's kind of what makes me wonder, is he actually as good? But maybe you're right. Maybe he's a legend in his own mind, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and different people have different skill sets. And it seems like the Malazans have, if you think of like Braventooth, the training he puts the soldiers through, he has formed some of the most legendary soldiers the world has ever seen. The Bridgeburners all went through him. We haven't seen much of Tavora's army yet, but they went through him as well. We'll see what they're made of. Individuals in the right place with the right skills can make all the difference in the world. You replace them with somebody else that theoretically has the same knowledge but not the same skill in that role, and things can fall apart.
Yeah.
I see it all the time in corporate structures where you have a really good leader, they move on to something else, and then things very quickly fall apart. The processes that were in place stop being followed by people, and then little things start breaking here and there, and pretty soon it's all chaotic. The right person makes a big difference.
Okay.
And part of that is also them surrounding themselves with other people because they can see that, they can trust to ensure that everything is operating correctly.
Okay, I can see that.
Sometimes you just have a really winning combination. Fresh to my mind is Jeff Kaplan was on Lex Fridman recently talking about Blizzard Entertainment and the old days of Blizzard. And it seemed like for a period of about 15 years, they were unstoppable. They had everything in place, and every game they came out was amazing. Every game.
Yeah.
Warcraft 1 through 3, Diablo 1 and 2, and then StarCraft, and then World of Warcraft. The industry was waiting for each of these games to come out, and they were just printing money with all of them. And then they got too big, people started leaving, and things started falling apart, and then they get bought out by a couple different corporations, and then it's a shadow of what it once was.
Yeah, backslide.
It's an interesting comparison to the Malazan Empire because you had this really legendary group of individuals that started all scrappy on the island of Malaz, and then what's happened? It's grown to a certain degree. It's almost verbatim the same problems, right? You're like...
Yeah.
Trying to hold this monstrosity together, but it's not the people who started it, and it's grown beyond what it was that made it special at that time, and trying to project all that out, sometimes it's just impossible.
Right. Well, you had a whole team with, who was it at that point? Kellenved and Dancer and Admiral Nock and everybody else kind of made that, whatever they called it, the family, easier to control. And then all one by one, like they disappear, they're killed, whatever. And then it's just Lysine trying to do the same thing just by herself. And you're right. It's not easy to control. It probably never was in the beginning. And now you've only got one person doing it. Just not the same.
Hebrecht thought, yet why would she need mages? She carries an Odotarl sword. And this is Tavora he's talking about. She carries an Odotarl sword, after all. Even so, its negating influence cannot be extended over her entire army. Dear Shaik, you may well defeat your sister after all. Felicin Younger asked, where would you go, Ghost Hands? Hebrecht replied, to my home, lass. Felicin Younger said, that is not what I meant. Hebrecht cocked his head and said, I do not know. Felicin Younger said, if indeed you do not, then I have seen your path before you have, and this I find hard to believe. You must leave here, Ghost Hands. You must retrace your path, else what haunts you will kill you. Hebrecht said, and that matters? Lass. Felicin Younger cut in, look beyond yourself for a moment, old man. Something is contained within you, trapped within your mortal flesh. What will happen when your flesh fails? Hebrecht was silent for a long moment, then he asked, how can you be so sure of this? My death might simply negate the risk of escape. It might shut the portal, as tightly sealed as it had been before. Felicin Younger said, because there is no going back. It's here, the power behind those ghostly hands of yours, not the Odotarl, which is fading, ever fading. Hebrecht asked, fading? Felicin replied, yes, fading. Have not your dreams and visions worsened? Have you not realized why? Yes, my mother has told me, on the Odotarl Isle, in the desert, that statue. Hebrecht, an entire island of Odotarl was created to contain that statue, to hold it prisoner. but you have given it a means to escape. There, through your hands. You must return. Flinging her hand away, Hebrecht snarled, Enough! Tell me, did she also tell you of herself on that journey? Felicien Younger said, That which she was before no longer matters. Hebrecht shouted, Oh, but it does, lass. It does matter. Felicien Younger asked, What do you mean? The temptation came close to overwhelming him. Hebrecht thought, Because she is Malazan, because she is Tavora's sister, because this war is no longer the whirlwinds. It has been stolen away, twisted by something far more powerful, by the ties of blood that bind us all in the harshest, tightest chains. What chance a raging goddess against that? Instead, he said nothing. In a low voice, Felicien Younger said, You must undertake the journey, but I know it cannot be done alone. No, I will go with you. He staggered away at her words, shaking his head. It was a horrible idea, a terrifying idea, yet brutally perfect. A nightmare of synchronicity. Felicien Younger said, Listen, it need not be just you and I. I will find someone else, a warrior, a loyal protector. Hebrecht said, Enough! No more of this! Then he thought, Yet it will take her away from Bidithal and his ghastly desires. It will take her away from the storm that is coming. Hebrecht demanded, With whom else have you spoken of this? Felicien Younger said, No one, but I thought, Leomin. He would choose for us someone from Mathok's people. Hebrecht said, Not a word, lass. Not now. Not yet. Felicien Younger's hand gripped his forearm once more. She said, We cannot wait too long, Ghost Hands. Hebrecht said, Not yet, Felicien. Now, take me home, please.
Every time someone reveals a little of their plans, what they're thinking, who they're talking to, it always feels so dangerous. Like you never know who you can trust in this camp. It seems so innocent. I just asked Leomin. You don't know how, like I said, it just feels so dangerous. I don't know. It never feels like you can fully trust anybody in this whole encampment.
Yeah, I could see that. It's like East Germany during the Soviet Union. You never know who's going to be in the Stasi or whatever.
Yeah, right.
The secret police, who's reporting to who, and what can you say safely without getting in trouble and ending up in chains somewhere, some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
One thing I was thinking about here is, I wonder why Hebrecht's hesitating to leave here. He knows they need to go. The opportunity could be there, so why stay?
It does make you wonder why the hesitation. I agree with that. And I can't really think of a reason other than he's just uncertain. What would those uncertain feelings be? Would it be loyalty to
Felicien?
Shaik, Felicien,
Maybe.
Felicien Elder?
That's the only thing I can think of.
Because that's the only thing in this camp that's really might hold him, is some kind of loyalty to her. There's not anybody else in the camp. He does say Felicien Younger, but if they're going together,
she's with him.
And she goes, then she's with him. It's not that big of a deal. Because I get the feeling that he wants the same answers. He wants to go and see the Jade statue as well and maybe get more information. I don't know. It's hard to figure out.
Do you think he wants to go or he's avoiding it?
You're right. Maybe that's part of his hesitance, is he's avoiding that, and he can easily say loyalty to Felicien Elder and use that as an excuse for not leaving.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that might be it. Maybe he's afraid of what could come of it.
Doesn't want to admit to it.
Yeah.
Hasn't fully realized that he might be reluctant to go. I'm not sure.
I mean, sometimes we don't want to do the hard thing, even if it's right.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to stop here and we'll pick up the chapter where we left off next week for standout moments.
I find there's an interesting difference between the way Karsa is interacting with these statues that he's carved of Bairoth and Delim and the Seven Gods, compared to how Onrak and Troll were talking about the statues of the hounds in the last chapter. Karsa carved these statues of his companions, and it seems to give them life or some type of freedom in a different way, where the statues of the hounds with Onrak and Troll, they were kind of being bound or being captured. So there's kind of an interesting difference in the way they're viewing the things. They're kind of on the same line where they're giving life to something, but one seems to be containing it and the other seems to be giving it some kind of freedom.
I think it's the matter of perception. I think it's the same thing, because Bairoth and Delim's spirits, wherever they've gone, could potentially be wandering.
Mm-hmm.
And so Karsa, while he's honoring them, you're looking at it from the perspective that Onrak and Troll were analyzing the people that carved these statues and the effects it had on the spirits of the Seven Hounds of Darkness. Whereas we're looking at it from the worshipper's perspective when Karsa's doing this, and he's doing it to honor them. So it's coming at it from the opposite angle. And to him, he's doing it to honor them and have a place to remember them and get his thoughts out about them and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of a shift, I think, that you're picking up on here.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think you're right.
But then also, I think the love that he put into Delam and Bairoths versus that of the Seven, I think that resentment towards the Seven, of feeling used by them, and the subjugation of his people, in a way, by them, that probably did come through a little bit in the way he was carving them.
I agree.
Leoman's diagnosis of humanity and his solution being annihilation for everyone is a bleak outlook on life. And it shows just how he overlooks all the good in the world in favor of focusing on only the evil.
Yeah, that's a good point, too.
Is he black-pilled? Or is it worse than black-pilled?
It seems like it.
I think might be worse. Whatever the burn-it-all pill is.
Yeah. If what Shaik looked into his soul and saw no loyalty and all that, he's lost all of it. And if what you said earlier, that he's like going all in on the Book of Drajna and the apocalypse and just the end of everything. And that's a pretty dark place to be. Hebrick's reading of the deck was really cool. Shaik describing it to him interpreting it. Kind of fun to know Felicin and Hebrick's little secret about who the master of the deck is, and everybody else in this camp has their own unknown little secrets. It's kind of a fun little back and forth. I'm not even sure she knows.
She doesn't.
But it's interesting that she can't put it together, but he can.
She senses something's there, but he's not giving it to her.
Yeah, he won't say it out loud.
But he can't say it to her in front of the others. He needs a secret meeting where everybody gets kicked out.
Well, what's funny is he won't, even after that, she kicks everybody out, and he's like, I'm not even going to talk about it anymore. I wonder why. Maybe he understands that would be maybe the final nail. She already broke down when she found out that he was alive, and now if she found out that he was the master of the deck, that also might make her spiral even more.
She might feel like she's going to be on the receiving end of that justice, that she's not one that would be tolerated by the master of the deck, and both of her siblings are coming after her. That would be too much.
Yeah, maybe that's a reason he's not saying, and he's keeping those cards close to his vest.
Yeah. All right, great job today, Dane.
Good job, Kamraun. Do you have any final thoughts?
These meetings with the leaders in this camp are trying.
Yeah.
They really are. And I think he did a good job of bringing out the worst in these characters. I guess mainly it's Bidithal that's the issue in today's episode, the infighting, the pettiness of it. Lorik, I'm cool with. Febrile, I don't have a great impression of, but he's pretty quiet, so not that much of an issue.
Yeah.
I've heard from other people that this is the hard part of this book, that they really don't like the goings-on in this camp.
Yeah. Even worse than Karsa's section?
Well, Karsa's divisive because people don't like the way he's acting in the beginning of the book. And then that displeasure carries over. They just don't like Karsa in general. The things he's capable of doing bothers some people. This is a little bit different, I think, in that it's just tough sections to get through. It's hard to read through all this infighting and bickering. And then Shaik just seems to be trapped in it, not exercising any of her power to shut them up, get them out of there, or whatever. She feels trapped doing whatever she's doing. So I understand, and hopefully these are making it a little bit more bearable, these episodes. It's definitely more fun to joke about things as you're getting through it instead of just trudging through this infighting and political backstabbing and whatever else is going on here.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to talk about, I guess.
So you did have some final thoughts. You just tried to get me.
I did want to get you.
Okay.
But I do have something I was curious about. It's Felicin Elder, Shaik, that you would think that just like Shaik Elder, even before Felicin, her mind seemed to be made up. The Whirlwind Goddess had the goal to follow the Book of Drajna. Now, Felicin becoming Shaik, she seems to be kind of caught in between two things. This stuff with the family, her sister Tavora, her brother Ganos, and the army of the apocalypse. Like, she can't really make a decision on what she needs to do. She's stuck in the middle somehow. And it's interesting that her memories from before are still filtering through, and that the Whirlwind Goddess hasn't completely corrupted her mind and made her follow that path, follow the apocalypse and everything.
Yeah.
I'm curious why she's having such a hard time separating the two. It's just an interesting character development in her, I guess.
Part of me thinks the Whirlwind Goddess just chose whatever worked at the time because nobody else was showing up. But the issue was Felicin isn't from Seven Cities. She wasn't raised here. I think Shaik Elder, the original Shaik, was raised in this, and so probably came in with some preconceived notions of how Seven Cities should look, whereas Felicin doesn't really care. She's using that. They're using each other. And the problem is, Felicin, she was a coddled lifestyle leading up to a point. The skills she was developing were nothing like Ganoa's and Tavora that they were developing as they were growing up. You know, she was doing whatever spoiled kids do that are nobles, dancing lessons and knitting or embroidery or whatever skills that the youngest female child would be doing, preparing them to probably marry off to another family or something like that. So gets thrown into this really harsh world and doesn't handle it well. She's not the best template to take over the mantle of Shaik.
I think that's a really good point I hadn't really thought about, that she's not from Seven Cities, and she would already have some of those feelings baked in, and her being from a noble family changes things a lot, I guess. And she was just a kind of tool of expedience. She happened to be there. She was a woman. She went along with it.
And that's part of the problem with this whole scenario, I think, is it become a personal thing now. It's not the apocalypse anymore. It's her versus Tavora.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.